Hello, everyone. Oh my goodness. Today, it's a very, very special day for me because I have a guest who truly is my dream guest, someone who I really wanted to have conversation with for a little bit more than 2 years, almost 2.5 in a way. And someone who, let me put this way, there is no one who I've listened to in those last 2.5 years that has made such a big impact on me, on my way of thinking, on my way of perceiving political situations and relationships and dynamics, and someone who I value immensely, someone who I've learned a lot from, and someone who actually, in my opinion, I wouldn't say is the only one, to me is the one I go to who speaks the truth. And that's something what I want on this channel to be the main thing, to seek that truth with our own understanding. And today I'm absolutely honored and really grateful for Tori to be with me. Tori, welcome to my channel.
Thank you for having me. And I'm so glad we're doing this. I mean, we've corresponded before, and I'm so glad that I have the time to be here with you today.
Thank you. And I actually have this written in Greek to say, so hopefully I can pronounce it. Kalosites, Tori.
Thank you.
So to those of you who don't know who Tori is, I will give a little bit introduction here, but then I will allow Tori to say to us where you can find her, guys. So Tori, she's a journalist, she's a scientist, she's a linguist. I have to admit, I don't remember how many languages she speaks, but she speaks a lot of languages. She's a time traveler, she's a mom, she's a dog and a cat lover and owner, of course. And she has, in my opinion, the best show you can watch and listen to if you want to learn about things that are taking place. And that show is Tori Says Show. So Tori, where people can find you?
Well, it depends where they allow me to stay, right? I used to be everywhere. I'm going the line with YouTube, but I only put things that I know will not get me banned. I'm on Rumble, I'm on Locals, I'm on Telegram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram for now, right? I'm on Truth Social as well. And there's a website, torisays.com, where I put most of my articles that I have put together. And then also there's a site that someone created called torisaid.com. Since I've done so many shows over the years, all my content is actually pulled there. So it's Tori Said. And if you want to find a topic that you're curious about, let's say you want to look up Poland or Ukraine or, I don't know, dogs, you just search the word and it'll come up. Now, it's not accurate science because it's transcribed by a computer, right? So sometimes there's misspelling. So if you're looking for names, you have to be creative because it doesn't always transcribe it correctly. But that's the best place to start. I like to opine, and yeah, and I think truth is the answer to many things. And this is coming from someone who had a career of lying, so it's quite resilient in that sense.
So I want to say those few things that are important for me, and please correct me if I jinx anything here. Well, first of all, we can thank you for all the stickers of Biden that were showing up much before this situation in Ukraine, in the gas station, on the pumps, because there was a huge movement. Who did that? Who created this price for the gasoline? And it was the sticker. And the movement was coming from Tori because people listen to Tori. And it's important to pay attention to those things that seemingly insignificant, they make a huge difference. Huge difference. And then Tori also is the one who, how was the word to use? when parents stood up to the schooling boards and were removing people who were brainwashing their children with 69 genders, that is also a lot of credit has to go to Tori for this. And for the exposing shenanigans with elections that we will jump into in this conversation, we have to thank Tori for this. And I would like to know, Tori, and yes, I know that you have worked for former CIA director John Brennan, and you were independent contractor, as I came across. I also, if I mispronounce it, please correct me, you were in naval intelligence, correct, Tori?
Well, I was recruited into the military as part of the process in intelligence. Yes, I think that was their way to bring me into the system because after, less than a year, once I was completing my training, I think what they were doing is figuring out where to place me and how to. But I was young at the time, so I was not aware. And the most most of my activities were done overseas. Europe, the Mediterranean, Middle East, and Africa. So I think it was more of a period of time where they did their assessments and planning out where they were going to place me. So the controlled place that they could put me, because it was either I join the Navy or I go back to the US and start my program in computational linguistics with John Hopkins. That was the goal. Yeah.
So there's so much, guys, I can talk to Tori about because I'm just, like I said, I'm actually overwhelmed today by her presence here with me. There are so many topics. There is one thing before we go into my first question here is that some of you know, some of you don't, but that accidental forgetting of Hunter's laptop in that repair shop, we actually have to thank Tori for this, because she was the one, and I will let you to explain if you want to, who was paying big amounts of money to like the prime hookers that were on call in certain times of the year by Mr. Hunter. And they were convincing him, or especially one was convincing him to get out of that family's prison and to coincidentally forget that laptop. And I want to thank you for doing this, Tori, because I think we will start here, if you don't mind, and we will follow that thread with what's happening also in Ukraine, if you don't mind, to start with, and Poland, and then elections and stuff like that. Is it okay if we start there?
Yeah. Okay. Well, to start with the Hunter Biden laptop, let's just the easiest way to start. I had a friend of mine who is an independent contractor, and she would collect evidence on politicians in California for the agency, for the CIA. And I'm saying she, could be a he, so nobody knows. But I received a phone call at one point, and I was told, hey, Hunter left, I think it was his iPhone or iPad at a very, very obscure crack house, right? With prostitutes. And so my first instinct was, and this is, we're talking 2017, maybe like February, I think, or was it January? I forget. So my first instinct was copy it. And then I thought, oh no, that's breaking the law. I was like, hey, could you do me a favor? Could you get me all the pimps and the prostitutes numbers, the ones that he always uses, like the services, like who he contacts? And I'm not talking about just the, Keith, his psychiatrist in Massachusetts. I want like the actual call girls, like who he hits up, and the girls themselves. So I started contacting them and saying, I love him. He's a prisoner, right? And I know a lot of people are finding this very difficult to surmise, but I had done a show on Britney Spears before it was a thing, right? I got a lot of heat from it. People are like, we listen to you for your news. Why are you talking about Britney Spears? Well, I want you guys to think it was the same thing with Hunter Biden. Because if people actually read correctly his laptop, his text messages, this guy was bringing in millions of dollars for a bunch of politicians and his dad and Obama and Dan, and he was begging them for money. He was an addict, and that was perfect for them. So that way he doesn't fight back. And so reaching out to some of these prostitutes, I know a lot of them got cash from me, you know, and they probably didn't do anything, or maybe they did, but it did work, because I could see it in the conversations looking back when I got his laptop in 2020, that it was working, that he was having conversations with Ashley Biden about it too. And all I asked him to do was to encourage him to have the courage to own up to what he did, and that no one would blame him. And many will say, but he raped and he did. He's under the influence. If you've never been a drug addict, right? That's number one. You don't understand what kind of demon that is. That can consume you to the point where you're inhuman. And then on top of that, if your father is using you and owns you and uses you in every aspect of your life, you must go there. You're going to look like this. You're going to say this, right? It's one of the most abusive relationships. Remember,
Yes.
Hunter was the throwaway child. Bo was the star of everything. And they took Bo away from Joe Biden when he put up, you know, there were some shenanigans, and you know, he's pissed at Obama for it. They let
So
that
they sacrificed him, Tori?
yes.
Mm-hmm.
They took out Bo to control Joe more. Let's put it this way. So he was selected to be eliminated to control him more. And it's hard for people to have compassion for human beings like this, right? But you know, I tell this to everyone. You always have to see the evil people. Just try to see that once they were 3-4 years old, looking all cute, and children with the world at their feet, with the potential to be an amazing person that gives to humanity, that is loved, that is embraced. And if you see every person like that, you can have compassion. Doesn't mean you excuse their behavior, God forbid, right? And accountability should be there, but there should be compassion. And so Joe, on that hand, created Hunter Biden as the front. He was always the front. From the beginning, he was always struggling for approval from his dad, an attaboy. And you could see in their text messages how thirsty he was to hear something from his father. And his father would give him things like, I love you. Or when he was vice president, he would be hitting up his assistant and saying, I have no money. I'm stranded here. And, you know, they would cash app him $500. Right. And it's like, okay, so this guy his dad is the vice president and he has zero money, but he just closed a deal of 15 million. Where's this money? He had absolutely nothing. So I used that because I knew that was happening as Tori, right? I used that to amplify the compassion, because a lot of prostitutes are very compassionate because of the trauma they go through, especially the ones that have lesser self-esteem. So, you know, they like doing good things. You know, people, that's just a prostitute. It doesn't matter. They're still a human being. And, you know, maybe they like sex, but maybe they feel like they have to do this too. That, you know, sexual slavery isn't just being locked up in a dungeon. Your pimp is your master, right? And then they have compassion. So it was all about earwigging the right things. Like, this can all go away. You know, yeah, you might be ridiculed, but it's okay. You know, you're clean. You didn't have any part of this. You know, they used you. You deserve more. Why are you always broke and they're making money? And they would just amplify. And it worked, because there was conversations, and I'm so shocked that no one brings this up. There's actually conversations of Ashley Biden after he dropped off the laptop saying, did you do it? I'm so proud of you. And then nobody comes to think that Ashley Biden decides to start this diary in 2019. And just a few months later, abandons a diary with all this stuff. Come on. It was planned. The kids wanted out. You know, this was their rebellion for out. I mean, remember, Ashley Biden was touched by her dad. You know, and it's disgusting that a parent to their own flesh and blood would do something like that. You know, and nobody talks about that. and nobody wants to talk about it.
And this is exactly, I would like to ask you this now. With information that was on this laptop, okay? Not just in regard of human trafficking and very nefarious, horrible, evil things, but in regard of things that will call for treason, Tori, right?
Yeah. So, and yeah, no. Let me.
Why? Yes.
Yeah. Let me say something on it. So, Hunter Biden had a lot of stuff on there that was porn, but that was usually when he was off his rocker, right? Either with crack, heroin, cocaine, methadone, whatever he was doing. But there were also pictures of his dad, like in Africa, with young people, right? And so that has only remnants. So a lot of people could be shocked at the crimes against children, the prostitutes, the hookers, the cocaine, the crack, whatever, right? Or the fact that he planked with M&Ms on his erect penis, right? Everyone finds that fascinating, right? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And I keep saying that because in that laptop, it showed you just how coordinated they are. I have a thread and I wrote an article about how Hunter Biden with officials of the US and foreign officials planned and plotted how to smuggle someone from the southern border. That's a crime. I have, another article that I put out where I show, and it's timeline, right? I'm not saying, oh yeah, they planned it. Like here's an email from this year in 2015, and here's them plotting let's bring him through the border to meet Vice President Biden and Obama. That is one of the biggest things, but nobody talks about it. Or the fact that when China created the LNGs down in Louisiana, it was the Kazakhstani friends of Hunter's that were building the property down there, right? And he did that. So it was all in the family and all in the friends. The money that they were laundering, how they were laundering it, who was getting paid, how they were creating relationships between China and the US through CAA, which is the Creative Artists Agency. Everything you see in life, either on TV, radio, Spotify, internet, YouTube, television, movie theaters, is the Creative Artists Agency. And that's why I did that documentary called Enjoy the Show, which a lot of people that have watched it had said, oh my gosh, I never saw that. And it's because you're in it. What people don't understand is we're watching a movie. They have carefully orchestrated what we are allowed to see and what we aren't allowed to see globally. It's not just here. And that was all in the laptop too. Through the laptop, I found out that Sean Penn's bodyguard, who was responsible for the assassination of the Haitian president, was present there. Like no one talked about it until I dropped the article showing that guy who assassinated him was linked to Sean Penn, and Sean Penn was linked to the Bidens because Sean Penn had that Haiti organization that was rivaling with Hillary Clinton's, right? And in those two camps of Sean Penn, CAA, the new gods versus the old gods, that's what I call them, right? The old gods, new gods. The rivalry between them had sequestered other foreign and domestic politicians in those camps. I mean, it's so riddled with things that when you sit and you watch it, you're just like, are you kidding me? This is the stuff they do with the power they have. They just enrich themselves.
Will they ever face any tribunals for this story? I really would like to know.
So, see, we have all the evidence we need. We have everything we need. Everything. The problem is you can't get anything done if the people aren't on board. That's the problem. And what I saw when President Trump came out and announced his presidency, first of all, there were all the people on the cruise train, the traditional Republican, rhino that speaks Republican and convinces you that, it's capitalism and this, corporate interests, the identity they gave to the Republicans, right? But what I noticed is that everyone kept telling people that that we have them all and they're all being dead and they're all this and that. How's this? Let's pretend they're all executed right now as we speak. I want you to imagine that they're all gone, right? And that we've replaced them, which technology today, I mean, we can clone people and we can, and I mean, John McAfee was the king of that. He would hire people that he would have plastic surgery on them to make them look like him. It's not hard, right? This is why the guy had staged his death 3 times, okay? Because he had replicas of himself created, not actual clones grown in the lab, but people that looked kind of similar to him, height and weight, and then he would pay them to simply look like him. Facial changes, hair growth, right? Doesn't take long. Within 3 months, I can make a clone of you if I want to, right? You know, just by getting someone that looks about the same as you and just tidying them up, right? And a little bit snip here, snip there, hair color, right? And then
kind of like Biden, right? Tori, kind of like Biden.
Well, Biden, you know, I actually sometimes, you know, I'm like, is that Anthony Blinken in a suit, right? That's, you know, because the disguises we have are pretty incredible. On my show, I have shown the chief of disguise of the CIA talking about it too, and how she in the 80s, and keep in mind this is the 80s, how she wore a mask and the president at the time couldn't even detect that it was a mask. And that's 1980. It is now 2022. What do you think our capabilities are? But, you know, people watch things like Face Off, right? And they think, oh, you could still tell it's makeup. It's like, no, you can't. I could be wearing a whole face suit and you would never be able to. It's secondary skin. Usually we wear hand gloves that you can't even tell we're wearing hand gloves to avoid fingerprints, to avoid contact with substances. This is why when you see some of the politicians speak, you'll see their hands look old and sometimes new. It's because they're wearing second skin. That's what it's called. It's literally second skin. And that's been happening. Imagine if in the 80s, you know, they wouldn't be able to detect it. Imagine what we have now 40 years later. I mean, let's just put that down. You know, your computer's upgraded every year, right? What do you think? They haven't created the technology. We can create artificial organs and 3D print houses, but we can't create disguises that look, I mean, then you're dumb. It's like, you know, I can't help you. If you think that, oh yeah, everything else is advanced except for this, then I can't help you. Right. It's this cognitive dissonance where we're like, oh yeah, that's fine. You know, and it's done on purpose, like airplanes, right? Airplanes. They've been the same since 1950. They're just flying buses. And then you have to ask, oh no, they're more what? That they put new computers? It's the same damn thing. Why? It could be a lot sleeker. It could be a lot. Are you going to tell me that that's the only thing that they can't fix, but they're fixing everything else? And your computer, once you buy it 3 months later, it's rendered stupid and old, but you can't fix the planes for almost 100 years. Get out of here. See, this is done on purpose. It's orchestrated on purpose. Certain facets of our reality are hindered and others are amplified. And that's to confuse you. Because then when you sit and think about it, you're like, damn, that's right. Holy crap. Then what else? Exactly. Those are the questions everyone should ask. What else? Because what we're watching is an orchestrated show. And I urge all your listeners, it's on YouTube, so it's free. You don't have to pay for it.
Link is down below.
Yeah.
Yes, watch
if you
it.
Want to pay for it, you can go to Locals and pay for it, right? But I put it for free. I want you guys to watch that because once you understand that everything you've seen is a show and you're the spectator that is getting the consequences from that show, it'll enrage you. But I hope that aside from what you need to do is internalize that rage into motivation to ask the questions. Yeah, that's right. I mean, so we have computers that are out of date, you know, in a month, but we don't have disguise. Or we have cars that are fancy like this, but all we get is a Tesla now that drives for me. That's all we get right now. Are you kidding? Right? These are the things we should be asking ourselves. Why are some things not progressing and other things are? You know, why? Because they don't want us to travel overseas faster, right? They want you to have to take 2 days to do it. They want to make it expensive. They want to make it hard on purpose because it keeps us dumb. Stupider you are, the happier you are, right? And that's true. A lot of us would like to unsee things and unhear things and unrecognize things because, you know, ignorance is bliss. You know, you're ignorant to the fact and you're like, oh yeah, da, 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 da. Like, you know, there's war going on and you're like, oh, you can't see, right? You're ignorant, right? So it doesn't affect you. It's kind of like what I said when, you know, the whole thing came out globally. I said the Amish aren't getting it because they don't have a TV.
So yes, exactly. Right? Absolutely. Yes.
And that's it. They didn't see that people were being like this. So, you know, and they didn't get it. And the whole world got it except for them because they didn't have a TV. So that is the evidence right there. And so Hunter Biden's laptop was riddled with evidence of corruption, of self-enrichment. I mean, I even found emails that the president of the United States, then Obama, was using with Biden, which was on GMX, which is German intelligence, to evade NSA detection, because Germany had kicked out the NSA. They had blocked them. So when Obama and Biden would be communicating, they would be communicating on German intelligence servers, so the NSA couldn't watch them. I put the article up there to show it, that they were using outside emails. Yet, you know, the facade is just so sickening. You know how they're targeting specific people, but they don't, it's like, you know, they're like, oh, you know, when you go to the bathroom, it smells. And it's like, why? Does yours smell like roses? I'm sorry. Right. This is how it is. It's like the camel making fun of the camel's hump. They're all throwing each other under the bus, but they're all doing the same thing. And Hunter Biden's laptop did just that. Not only that, it showed the corruptions among other governments too. Right.
Right.
Ghana, Africa,
and Ukraine. So I really want to ask you this. What is really going on in Ukraine? And is Putin, in your opinion, doing the right thing?
Putin is doing everything I would do. Done. I would have done the same thing. You know, the Ukrainians never wanted to leave Mother Russia, almost like the Crimeans. I was there, right? I helped rig the 2014 elections in Ukraine. I was part of that team, right? I hired the people to go there. That was the last thing I did. And I can tell you, even the color revolution they had, it was all to influence them to go to the West. Why? Because they wanted to sequester Russia, because Russia had learned a lesson. And the lesson was that Gorbachev thought he was smarter, right? And I think you're going to see some of this in the Enjoy the Show documentary too. We put some of that in there. At one part in the documentary, I show how they had rock concerts in East Germany and in Moscow. It was right after, a year after the concerts, the governments fell. They allowed them to enter their territory. So they needed to get Putin out. And how they did it was, in 2010, he caught the State Department advocating for riots and protests and through USAID. He banned USAID in 2012. They are not allowed to operate within the borders of Russia. And that's where the US government was like, okay, since he won't allow us to control the population and infiltrate it, and that was it, you know, and of course he would. Albania tried to. Look what happened to them. They're gone. The Albanians tried to, and they caused this fake Muslim Christian war, right? And like Albanians give a shit. Let's be straight. Excuse my French. They don't, right? They're happy in harmony. It's enough that, you know, they're considered the new Poles, and no offense to the Polish, right?
No, it's Polish, okay. We will get there too.
Yeah, no, but the Polish were used in Europe as cheap labor for forever. Right. And that gave them the benefit of becoming one of the European leading tradesmen. If you want fine cabinetry, you get a Polish person to do it. If you want perfect plumbing and electrician, it's a Polish person that does it. And that actually benefited them because they fine-tune their skills, and they're incredible workers, right? They are the backbone of, you know, sustaining the European environment in general, as trade workers. The Albanians, on the other hand, are now almost like, you know, like the caravans that are coming through the southern border in America, right? And so this happened to the Albanians when they decided they didn't want them in their elections, when they didn't want the influence operation. So Ukraine began in 2010 when Putin put his foot down, right, about this whole State Department shenanigans. Realized it because if everybody goes to the USAID website, they'll see that they say, oh, we use things to bring democracy to the world. And it's like, you mean you infiltrate, cause Arab Spring events, color revolutions, armed riots, so that you can install the people you want. And I've said this, and people are like, well, you're saying it, you're still alive. Yeah, because God's got me. When my time is spent, he'll take me out, right? The fact of the matter is, we don't use guns to take over countries anymore. We use elections. And if you don't let us do your elections, then we will force you to have elections our way by creating riots and protests. This is what you saw in Ukraine. Do you really think that Ukrainians that are not Gen Z, right, wanted to be part of Europe? No. Maybe a handful that were brainwashed into the, I want to be a European rather than a Ukrainian, right? The Crimeans are Crimeans. They just have the protection of Russia. And it's like nothing's changed. Why can't the Ukrainians have that? You know what they did? They targeted the Ukrainians so hard, not only with these color revolutions and the infiltration, but they went for their church. The Ukrainian church broke off from the Russian and Greek Orthodox Church. They created their own church. If people pay attention, the Ukrainians were targeted in small increments by the West to break their identity down in order to capture them. And so it was very easy for then us to come in 2014 and have elections. And this is why Ukraine is in the state that it's at. Because
so by breaking that church, you are bringing fascism in, correct?
Well, by breaking the church, you're destroying the foundations of their identity.
Yes, and then you introduce
whatever
ideology. Yes, exactly.
Exactly, Western ideology. And that's how you have to break someone down to the point where you can reprogram them the way you want. And this is why the Eastern Ukrainians are like, nah, man, they're crazy out there. Like, I want Russia. This is, there was a documentary that Vice did, and it's still online. And I've showed it a couple times on my show where I'm like, look, this guy is literally looking for people that hate Putin, right? And all of them are like, no, we've always been part of Russia. They leave us alone, and we do our thing. They acknowledge that we're an independent territory, right? It's like Greece, right? There's mainland Greece, and then there's the islands, right? The islands have their own rules. Like in Crete, you can have guns. Mainland Greece, not so much. You can't shoot guns in the air. In Crete, you can, right? It's the island thing, right? So why aren't they breaking off, right? Cyprus, if they had a choice, would they pick England or would they pick Greece? That's a hard question, right? Considering the Turks are there. But I could tell you they mostly identify with Greece. Would that mean that Greece would take over Cyprus? Absolutely not. You see how that works? They all had a history together and they stick together. So what happened in Ukraine was they have, as you know, a lot of natural gas. The Germans wanted that. And that's how Europe came in. They threw all this debt, right? And I've talked about this before. They own even the hole in the underwear of a Ukrainian right now. They gave them so much debt that they own the nation of Ukraine. The European Union owns Ukraine. It's not Ukrainian. They own your debt. They own the holes in your underwear. You owe them your life. That's what happened to Greece. They forfeited their sovereignty for debt. Everyone was talking about Greece's debt to the IMF and the EU, right? Ukraine's is 3-4 times larger than that. They own.
It's over, Tori. So it's over for the country. It's over.
It is. And they can choose. They destroyed themselves because they were fed the idea that they should be part of something bigger. That is not what Ukrainians are. Ukrainians are proud of their own dialect, of their own culture, right? It's a little bit different than the Russian, right? Because it's a dialect. It's like Northern Greece and Southern Greece and islanders and mainlanders. I mean, it's your culture. You decided to destroy that, and now your nation is destroyed, and you allowed these people to come in to use your nation as a blind spot. And so Ukraine started, Ukraine was being captured by Europe by, that guy that had Burisma, Mikhailsky. He was arrested by the United Kingdom in late 2013 for debt, right? It was like $19 million.
One thing I have to say here, Tori, and you know all of this, but I want to thank you actually personally for this. Because of you, and I didn't know this, that Polish president, one of the ex-Polish presidents, Aleksander Kwaśniewski, that still is, I believe, on board of Burisma. He was the one who received, it was the email you were showing, that someone was connecting Hunter with this Polish gentleman who has connections, and he can do it for like 1 million euros just for the contact. So the connection of Burisma in Poland, specifically too. It's very strong, okay? And I'm observing this now, being in Poland, how Polish politicians are standing for Ukraine. That's why I want to ask you also this.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. There was a lot of nations standing for Ukraine because it's a struggle right now. And this is why all the countries are plotting against the US, right? They're plotting for the demise of America, and they're letting Biden do it. And he's leading the way, right? And it's not Biden. It's the fourth unelected branch of government, the military industrial complex that thinks they know better. And that's the thing. How are you going to go into places that have wars and relationships within them for thousands of years and come in there as a fresh newborn baby thinking that you know everything? This is how you lose. You don't go, you know, it's like playing backgammon. Do you play backgammon? Okay. So I play backgammon, and I would always play with old people, right? That are like 80, 90, and they've been playing backgammon in the Middle East and Greece and Turkey and Cyprus all their life, right? You don't play with them. They've been playing the game for a very long time. You will lose. And that's who I played with, so I can learn, right? Played with, but I would never battle with them because they are seasoned. So they came in thinking that they can take a seasoned area, and what Germany and the UK, the Crown, did was sit back and let them do it. So what happened was, when that guy got arrested, a call was made to John Kerry. I know this for a fact, right? Because I monitored these things. That was my job, right? And, you know, he needed help. So they made that go away. And in exchange, John Kerry's kid, you know, Mitt Romney, Pelosi's son, all of them started to enter into Ukraine, and they got this sweet deal. I know this, again, because in Luxembourg is the center of the Grand Intelligence Agency, and it's very nefarious. We're talking, you know, a lot of people are like, yeah, that's so stupid, satanic stuff. Really? Well, if there's satanic stuff, right, what makes you think that there is no God either, right? I'm just going to put that there. It's called the Damascene Group. And so it is an intelligence group that is global that I work for. That's where I independent contracted. Now, I tell people that I work with John Brennan because it's a lot more digestible than saying, well, actually, I represented U.S. interests and he was my point of contact and he trained me for it, right? And most of the times that I would interact with John Brennan, for the record, I was in disguise because not even the intelligence community was supposed to know what I look like most of the time, the brick and mortar. The only time that John saw my face was when I asked him about something off the coast of Turkey, because I kind of saw him like a father figure because he kept me tethered to my mission to help my nation, right? And guide me. I was the customer of the CIA. I was the customer of the DOD. I was the customer of the DIA, but at the same time, our company was the one giving intelligence to the CIA that would then give it to the DOD, then give it to the military. And obviously they would only get 1% of what it was, right? All your communications globally are stored in one place. Every single phone call, every single text. So I saw this happen. So at that time, I was in the US when all of this happened. I still had access to the system, believe it or not, up until early 2020. Until my friend Millie Weaver, who's another journalist, exposed the company, and suddenly GCHQ, the website of GCHQ, and Global Security Group, Global Strategies Group, Global Group, whatever, they keep changing their name, their front, both of those web pages were down. That's like saying the CIA web page went down, right? That's a big deal because I had access from the administration level. It was created ground up, and I was one of the first people there. So I had admin rights from the admin network guy. So before the network guy was hired, I already had a username and password. So when I tell people, hey, I've seen all of these. I knew the phone calls they made. I knew how they were going to get Biden in. I was listening to them talking at the Munich conference in 2019 because it was all on the system and I had legal access to do it. I had a username and password. Nobody can say I broke the law. I had the right to see that because I had a username and password. If I don't have the right, then go ahead. And if they were to say, well, you violated that right, then they would have to admit that it exists. So there you go. They're not going to admit that that exists. So they can't prosecute me for accessing it. They can make my life a bicycle, right? That's what they've been doing. I feel like I've been going around life on roller skates, right? But, you know, that's a fact. So in Ukraine, again, all of these Americans came in and it was a freaking trap. They didn't see the trap that was being laid out by the other nations. And it's like, at that point, I was just watching it and I was like, oh, this is so dumb. Obama better not write a bill. Guess what he did? He wrote a bill in 2014, giving them $50 million for elections. And that's how I hired the people from the State Department to go and do the elections. And people pay attention. In 2014, they stopped counting in the middle of the night. And in the morning, the other guy won. Ukraine is their black front, meaning it's a blind spot. Nobody talks about it. Everybody has interests. Germany has interests. The crown has interests, right? Everybody has interests. It's been prostituted. I feel so
yes
people there. It's incredible.
How this will end, Tori, with Ukraine?
Borders change every day. Throughout history, borders change, nations fall, empires rise. People should have seen how it's going to end for Ukraine when the United Kingdom pulled out of the EU. Right? Well, what we need to be hoping for is that the Ukrainians say enough. We're not doing this anymore. And unfortunately, the Ukrainians are being confused. They're being told what to do. They're being told things. I mean, I know friends that were Ukrainian Greek and they fled and the Russians helped them flee. The Ukrainians were trying to keep them trapped. These are atrocities, what they're doing. They're killing their own people. And then today, oh, there's a missile on the borders of Poland and it's an S-300. It's Russian. It's like Russia wouldn't do that. If Russia wanted to take out the Ukraine, it would take them literally an hour to come in with airplanes and it's gone. It's toast.
So what happened on that border with Poland, Tori?
Well, now they're going to start blaming the United States. Here's where the tables are going to turn on this establishment. You're going to see how that works. They're coming after the United States of America. And, you know, I say this all the time, and I'm pretty sure you living in Europe and traveling can see it. Everybody in the world thinks Americans are stupid, right? They've got to be stupid. I mean, can't they see what's happening? Are they that oblivious that there's a rest of the world, right? People do think Americans are stupid. I mean, even Alexander, what his name, Vindman, the lieutenant that is Ukrainian, by the way, and he was an asset, by the way, that testified, you know, about all the shenanigans, right? The Ukraine, the dossiers, all this BS, right? He would sit in a room with soldiers from all over the world and say Americans are stupid. And he was an American officer. But it's true, though. Americans are so bombarded with marketing that they can't tell what's truth and what's fiction. You know, we have people that actually think that, you know, Republicans care about Americans. They don't. They're the same thing as the Democrats, right? And people forget history and they're erasing history. This is why they're taking down all these statues and creating new narratives. You know, if you look back into American history, which isn't that long, it's like less than 250 years. Okay. It's not like they've been here for a while and you get shit confused. It's there. You know, there was the Federalist Party, and then there was a party called the Republican Democrat. And then the Federalist Party disappeared, and then you had two parties, the Republicans and the Democrat. So one party became two. It's not rocket science. It's right there. It's the simplest thing. And right now, the geopolitics, we are going to see such a huge move. You know, the UN, the European Council, first of all, has its headquarters in Kazakhstan. That's where they were established in the 90s. And no one asked themselves, well, why are you going to Kazakhstan? They're not even part of the EU. Right? It's because they wanted Eurasia and Putin wasn't playing games. He was like, we're not doing this. This is why they hate him. Right? He's like, no, we're not doing this. Right? And then you have China sitting in the background, right? Who is they are an expansionist nation, but with patience. They won't come in and start guns a-blazing, right? They're going to come in and they're going to watch you. They're going to be like, let me help you destroy yourself. And they'll just watch. And when you're weak, they come in and take over. Because you will willingly do it. How do I know this? Have you watched Netflix or Amazon lately? Most of them are Chinese dramas and K-pop things and bringing in the Oriental culture for the past 2 years. They're already conditioning and invading. And then while all the Europeans are looking to Africa, right? The Chinese are already there. They bought all the ports in Africa. They created the supermarkets. They created the infrastructure. And they're just sitting there waiting for the weak moment. And then Interpol decides that they're going to move their offices to South America, to South Africa, which they did. Interpol is now headquartered in South Africa. That should tell you that they gave up on Europe. Africa is going to be the home of the elites once they eradicate the Africans. And the rest of the world will be the production companies, right? Producing things, the slave labor for the elites. And this is how they're moving. But the Chinese already have their dibs. So, that's not going to work out too well. And the only way to do this is by eradicating the United States of America. And they're already plotting that. I think that missile fragment, will be blamed on the United States of America.
So now I would like to ask you this. Yesterday, President Trump announced that he will be running for 2024 to be president of the United States. He mentioned a few things, and I want to ask you how this can be done. Because without honest elections, nothing really makes sense, in my opinion. And that you know a lot about Tori. And you said you were the one who was helping in 45 elections to be changed all around the world, if I got this number correct. I remember 45.
Yes.
Yeah, because of President Trump, 45th president. So it was easy for me to remember. But here is this list I written down about the next elections. It should be only with voter ID. All paper ballots, no mail-in ballots, and no machines. And they should be all counted on the election day. Tori, how this can be achieved? Tell me. And will that, I have to talk around, situation that took place in November 2020 ever be resolved and shown to the public?
So the President Trump, had a choice to make. He had a choice to rip the Band-Aid off and say, okay, we can put an end to this, because we can, right? And people are now deflated because he didn't. And the reason is that the people have to see it. You can't save someone that doesn't want to work. You ask God for a house, you're not going to sit in your chair and pray for a house when he gives you a shovel, right? You have to put the work in. You can't say, oh God, I want a new job, but you're not applying for a job. So how are you going to get a new job? Do you want me to drop it in your lap? The problem is that the propaganda, this platform with the 17th letter of the alphabet that happened was an operation to awaken the people that was hijacked. And it was hijacked in a way of profit and lulling people to sleep and telling them all these things. And it was done on a global scale. They minimized the atrocities that are happening against children. And I've said this before, right? I actually put a small clip of a documentary that I'm going to put. And if people actually pause and read that 5-minute clip I put on my YouTube, it'll break your heart in two. Again, like I said, think someone taking a 6-month-old, knowing that it will be disabled after it, and then they harvest it for parts. I want people to listen carefully to what I'm saying, because it's hard for people to digest, but this happens every day. Right now, as we're speaking, something like that is happening. We have the power to fix everything because we have everything we need. Q is software that doesn't require download. I can see everything in your phone if I want to. I can see every email you wrote. I can see every draft you have. I can see every text you send. I don't care how many VPNs you have. I can see it because our network runs on an RSA-backed network, which is allegedly encrypted. But there's an internet above that internet, the quantum internet, and people say that doesn't exist. Well, it does, because they're creating antivirus. How do you create an antivirus for something that doesn't exist? You see what I'm saying? So again, President Trump has all the tools. But unfortunately, you have to show people. You have to show you. You can't just tell you. And that's the problem. That right now we have to do this because we have to purge the people that are not working. I
Okay,
remember,
2 more years of Biden, that means?
not necessarily. Now, right now, as we are, I've been whistleblowing on these machines for forever. I actually got in contact a few weeks ago with Chris Curtis, who was the one that we hired after that meeting that I was in to create the software to rig elections. People pretend that that doesn't happen, but there's congressional testimony in 2005 because the first time they did it was in Ohio in 2004. And it was the Republicans that did it. And what people don't see is that they make these laws and these rules, right, to obliterate your ability to see. In 2020, when that happened and I went down there, I urged everyone to stop chasing the ballots. I said, let's just focus on these machines. If we put the energy on these machines, we will break open the enchilada. We have everything we need. But it didn't make the money if they did that. Some people were ignorant. Other people were on an operation. And other people just wanted to make money.
Yeah.
When mine was the simplest thing. You don't solve the Gordian knot. You cut it in half. You cut right through it. And I said, look here, no certification. 2 years later, they admit that they weren't certified. Isn't that enough? No, damage has been done. They didn't listen. Why? Because I wasn't on anybody's script. See, my friend Millie, who's a journalist, I would tell her these things. She'd take it with a grain of salt. Gavin, her husband, a little bit. But when she was in DC, someone actually approached her and said, what script are you on? What role are you playing? I don't think people understand when I say this. They're like, oh, it sounds kooky. No, it's not. Please watch, enjoy the show. You'll understand. It was at that point that she was outcasted too, right? She was already outcasted because she's not taking orders from anyone. And when they cannot control you, they cannot destroy you. I repeat, when they cannot control you, they cannot destroy you. And so it continues on, and we see that the president has been urging people to do things. I have been pushing the no machines forever. And now how can we fix this? Well, I ran for office, not expecting to win, obviously, Secretary of State. I am rough around the edges. I mean, I would have cleaned house for sure, but I needed to do a proof of concept that even with no media, no mention of my name, right? They didn't even have me on voter guides. So when people were getting lists at their home of all the candidates, my name wasn't even on it. Okay. They didn't even mention me. They said nothing.
Yeah.
And the only mentions that I would have is from the actual conservative side, the Republican, calling me all these names, which was something that the left did, because I exposed a huge human trafficking network between the Native American camps and Nevada and scams of money against the citizens. And by the way, I went up against a whole state. And all they did was file lies. But guess who won? I did. Where is that attorney general? He's dead. He killed himself. And he took 23 years of emails with him. But I digress. People love to attack people they don't understand. That's what they did to President Trump, didn't they? So then they created a persona for him. They surrounded him. So yesterday was a very difficult day for him because he had to make a choice. And the choice was, I see you suffering to put that t-shirt on like a kid, but I'm sorry. You're going to have to learn how to put that shirt on. And so he announced his presidency run, didn't say much more, advised of what needs to be done and how we need to get rid of the machines. There's already answers to that, right? And my run is helping fix that. So as we know, in the United States and like many other countries, we have infrastructure that conducts our politics. We have a right and a left. There's no in the middle. You are not allowed to be not blue or not red. You have to be one of the two. And what I did while running was show the world, right? Mm-hmm. Hey, look, if you decide you don't want to be funded by corporations like Walmart and Pfizer and pedophiles like Les Wexner, right? He got a sweet deal from the Department of Justice. He is the ultimate. Epstein was nothing compared to him. Nothing. And he's still sitting around in Ohio funding politics and doing his thing. And his name is on pediatric hospitals. The irony.
It's Victoria's Secret guy, right?
Yeah, Victoria's Secret guy. And there was a song that somebody made about Victoria's Secret. It's like, da-na-na-na-na-na, secret. There's an old guy in Ohio. A liberal actually made that song and showed his face in Epstein's. And Epstein was employed by him. I don't think people see it. And it's like, I want to pull my hair out. And I'm like, you're all running on stupid tangents. I know everyone wants to save the children. I know, this is horrific what they do, but you're not helping by not identifying the source of the problem. You're talking about the flowers, but not the root, right? You need the root out. So what I did was, as I tried to go in as a Republican. And the reason I did this was two-pronged. One, to show that I was not registered as a Republican, and they would demand that I kiss the ring. And so that was a fight I was ready to do. But they're so evil and so cocky that the actual Secretary of State of the state of Ohio, I was running against, broke the law. I literally broke the law and instructed people to break the law to not count my signatures. And then the media was like, she didn't have enough. And I was like, that's a lie. I had way more than enough, but they dismissed the petitions, which is against the law. Mm-hmm. But everyone laughed at me. I said, you're just stupid. I can't blame someone handicapped for not being able to run, right? It's like me making fun of someone with no legs. You can't do that. So I had to suck it up. And then I ran again as an independent. You know what terrified them? The first time I ran, I got all the signatures that were needed in less than 10 days. And I got all the signatures that were needed for independent under 28 days. People usually take a year and a half to collect valid signatures. Yeah.
It's the people.
Yeah, it was because I'm not the one running, it's the people. Mm-hmm. And so I get on the ballot successfully. He has to endorse me. And then the GOP comes in 5 minutes before the clock runs out to protest. But it was done unlawfully because it wasn't that one person that did it. It was a massive law firm. And then they had me go through a court, which wasn't even a court, which was a kangaroo court. We weren't allowed to say, hey, how'd you find this? And why? Are you saying that the blind person needs to sign? Oh, their document has expired. Is this where we're getting to? Saying that blind people aren't allowed to sign because they didn't have the appropriate thing. Like this is how low they went. And then the Secretary of State says, well, then now she's not on the ballot. So I had to go to the Supreme Court of Ohio. And that's where all my money spent. I mean, $80,000 have gone to just lawyers. But I was like, no, I'm not going away so soon. So I went to the Supreme Court of Ohio, who has been nothing but wrong, from the masks to the vax to everything. And I have them on the record violating the Ohio Constitution. And I'm like, okay, we're going to go again. And they found that he broke the law. They knew that I was going to take this to the Supreme Court. They had to stop me, right? They knew. If she goes to the Supreme Court and we let him break the law like this, we're all screwed. So the Ohio Supreme Court giving me the ruling that I could be on the ballot, they gave it to me the day before ballots were sent overseas. So here's me running for elections that people usually campaign for a year. I get put on the ballot 47 days before the election. How the heck am I going to run? And nobody's talking about me. They're interviewing all the candidates, but they omit me. Other independents were interviewed. I wasn't. It's like I didn't exist. But I still got 1.07% of a whole state. The population, think about it. The population of Ohio is the same as the population. It's 8 million, right? Registered voters. So let's say Greece is about 11. So that means in Greece with my 1%, I would have had seats in the House, right? The way they have it with all the parties, I would have seats in the House. I got a big percentage with nothing. I wasn't allowed to do advertisements. I wasn't allowed to do this. Only the last week they had room for it, right? This is how they work. And I won. But why did I do this? Because now I'm in the Supreme Court of the United States, where I say they treated me differently because I'm an independent. They had me, go through hoops. They won't let me observe the elections, even though I'm on the ballot. I should have the same rights that the Republican and the Democrat are. Why is this important? Because that's what they do. They don't allow independents to be running early. They only give them 2 months to campaign. That's when they decide if they're going to put them on the ballot. It's all wrong. And when the elections happen, you're not allowed to appoint observers to observe the counting of the votes that the law says. So here's another thing my lawsuit shows. Well, wait a minute. If the law says that I can observe the counting of the vote and the vote is done in a black box, then I should be able to see, does it count the vote 1-to-1? And in my lawsuit at the Supreme Court, I note that they don't count votes, they count ballots. Carrie lost, right? What did they do? They counted ballots. They didn't count the votes. They counted ballots. It's all a game. The Republican Party has access to the machine if they want to. They just choose not to. The Democrats have access to the machine if they want to. They just don't want to. They want the machines. And so the cognitive dissonance is real. And it frustrates me because I've said this many times to people of importance. Stop pushing the Republican Party. Stop doing this. And it's like, you know what? Maybe we should do it this way. Let the Republican Party oust President Trump. Let the Republican Party say we're not going to endorse him. Let the Republican Party kick him out so he can go independent. Because don't worry about it. On December 5th, I get my first hearing at the Supreme Court of the United States. And this is how you win. You make history. See, the Secretary of State, who's part of the World Economic Forum, who helped fix the elections and place Zelensky, he was in Ukraine. He was in Ukraine in 2019 and helped put Zelensky, an actor, into office, right? He's not a good guy. He's disgusting. He's helping overthrow our nation. He wants to change our elections to deploy internet voting. And that's going to happen very quickly in Ohio. That's why I'm here. This is the voter ID that the Republicans are talking about, very different to what President Trump is talking about. They want blockchain ID. If you remember when the sickness hit, right? And people had to get passports.
Yes.
Voter ID is the same thing. It's a QR digital ID, blockchain ID. Oh, don't worry. It's very safe. Really, it is. You can program shit like that, right? Just like I was telling people 2 years ago, you're not going to have money. You're going to have credits, coins, like the crypto market. And they're going to then take away the cash. And it's all going to
CBDC, right? And this will take place.
Oh, it's already taking place. 12 banks in the United States yesterday announced that they're deploying their first cryptocurrency.
So how, okay, let me ask you here.
And the reason they're doing it now is to take our guns away. Because what people think is, oh, they're making laws to take our guns. No, they can't do that. Second Amendment. Stop. They can make it more difficult to buy them, but they can't take it away completely, right? And there's no way laws like that will pass because you go to the Supreme Court and it's done, right? They get overruled. But what they did was they went to the banks and they said, anytime someone purchases a gun or any weapon or bullets, you're going to tag it with a special SKU code. So now the banks have this in line. And now the banks are deploying cryptocurrency, which now they're going to phase out your cash. So they're going to say, well, that's what you're trying to buy. We decline that purchase because we said so. And now you're going to find yourself where you're getting your paycheck and you have housing credits, luxury credits, food credits. And depending on how important they think you are is how much you get. Say you want to go get that Gucci bag for $3,000 because you feel like spending it and getting into debt because you love the bag. I'm a woman and I love handbags. Okay. Like I've eyeballed this new Gucci bag like so bad. And I'm like, oh, I don't think I can save enough fast enough, right? Because it's like expensive, and people are like, this is so stupid. It's a brand. But the thing is, you take them back and they fix them and they replace them, right? That's why you buy it because it's quality. But let's pretend that I want to buy that. But I'm only allowed to, because of my status, to have 300 credits a month. And if I don't use all my credits within the year, then I donate it to the government. So I'm saying luxury credit. No, they do it in China. I'm just saying this is the Chinese system, right? So I'm gathering all this money, and you know how they're going to know how much you're allowed to, because they're already collecting the data on how you vote. So your vote's not secret. See, that's what's so stupid. They tell you that they need the black box voting, right, to count the ballots, because it's for your anonymity. They shuffle the vote so nobody knows how you voted. But that's stupid because your ballot's scanned. There's a fucking picture. Who has that? Who has that? Who has the picture of the scan, right? You put the ballot in and it scans it. Who has the picture? Oh, let me guess. It's like Snapchat. It's deleted, right? Stop. It's collected. So when you go apply for a job, you don't get the job because I know how you voted.
Okay, let me ask you here, because now this looks like a horrible future. Is this going to be the reality in the United States? This is America after what, 2023, 2024? What will be America after 2024, Tori?
Borders are created every day. they're shifted, they're erased, they're redrawn. I believe the method that President Trump used, which was to allow them to see, for him to show them by being attacked, that there will be a very big change in the United States of America. Cities like New York will be cities, and states will be country. And those that choose to be marked and herded like cattle and to operate for the greater elites in Africa in the future will do so. And borders will change. And you will have a choice to live in the country or in a city. And the cities will be the point of contact for trade with the overlords in Africa after they pillage them. They hate the Africans. They've kept them in the dark with no electricity, starving, thirsty for a reason. You know, they convinced you that we put a flag on the moon, but we still have people hungry in Africa. They've convinced you that we can go to Mars, but we can't have clean water in places in Africa. And this is how stupid people are. And people get upset when I say it, but it's like, hey, you're the dumb one that believes it. You know, you see, and you know, that's the way it is. The slaughter that we will see in Africa. Remember, and it was the Africans that sold their own people. I want you to remember that. The slaughter we will see in the next 2 decades in Africa will be horrific. And that's if the Africans allow it to happen. But the Chinese will amplify it. The Chinese will get in there with their little TikToks, right? That's how they convinced everyone that they were sick, right? You know, shoveling bodies that were moving into fire and everyone's supposedly dying. And, you know, that's not true. They're going to aggravate. They're going to create the revolution in Africa in about a decade. And so what the United States needs to do is establish that it's not one big city, but if you want to be part of the city and part of that era, then do so. I said this in 2015 when I wrote about it. This is a civilized revolution. And the amount of blood we spill is dependent on the temperament of the people. And in a way, the evil of keeping people pacified with BS, of various personalities coming out and saying, trust the plan and sit down and do nothing. And I got this and we got all of this, right? Almost helped because it pacified the people. But it will also generate a small percentage of radical armed people, which is what I fear. So how I see this happening in the safest way is that borders will change. That this nation will no longer be the way it is today. And that we'll have zones within our own continent of access. And there will be wars when they wish to expand, because there will be unrest in the future in those cities about not allowing to populate. And those people in the country will slowly not be coming back. It's going to be good wins in the end. Good wins in the end, and it depends where you are. Unfortunately for Europe and Asia, it'll be bloodier. They will literally slaughter people. We saw the genocide that has happened over decades, you know, and we sat by idly. I demonstrated on my show an interview by Maya. She's a singer, and who described how they put 500,000 people on a strip of beach in 2009, and the government bombed them and killed 149,000. Did you hear about that on the news? I mean, wouldn't you have heard something like that? That 500,000 people were put on a beach strip and 149,000 were killed because the government bombed its own people? You see, it's all a show. and they're in charge. And most wars or rumored wars are not really happening. And is that bleak? Yes, it is. Because a lot of us are hoping that, oh, I wish it was like the good old time. When was it a good old time? That's right. When you were ignorant. It was always like this. It was always vicious. There was always evil, right? And the faster we accept that, the faster we can make change. And the change is, how do we ensure that we are not part of the cities? How do we ensure that we are not part of the problem? How do we maintain our selves? Because the cities are going to try to force the people in the country into submission. They're going to be ruining their crops. They're going to be using technology. They're going to send them into the Stone Age while they're in the New Age. There will be, in the next, 50 years, big problems, because Africa is not going to collapse until 2060. That's their plan. How do I know? Because I help write the script. Those are the people that I worked for. This is why I say people like me don't exist. And when I say things, hey, this is going to happen, it's because I wrote the script. I'm not saying that. There is a script and people are following it. This should have happened in 2005. We should have had one of the bloodiest civil wars. But 9/11 happened and that delayed it. So 9/11, though a tragedy, helped call the demise of people. Sometimes something that's meant for evil boomerangs right back at you. That's exactly what 9/11 did. By coaxing them that, hey, if you surveil them and get all their information, it'll be a lot easier to have more human bodies working for you in the future. They accepted that. So 9/11 was orchestrated. The lockdowns that we just had were to eliminate and subjugate people, to assert their authority on people, and to see how much they would accept. And the whole world bent the knee. Americans did not. But then the curious thing is, why is it that all over the world, they're not demanding COVID cards? But to enter the US, you have to have one. That's a question everyone should ask themselves. Wait a minute. In our nation, it's not mandatory. We can fly out and go anywhere around the world, and they don't demand that we give them a card. So then why are we asking everybody in the world to give a card to come in? I think you guys should think about that for a second. Isolation is real, and the tables are turning. They're conspiring right now on how to take us out. And President Trump has thrown a wrench into it. And the people that are listening only to his words are understanding it, not to these weird people that are saying, trust a plan. And, I even saw, what was it, that Q alerts thing? Oh, okay. Well, then what did they expect? See, that's the problem. Even those that you follow in life is people giving you hope and all this stuff, right? They fail you because it's based on false premise. Hopium. I give you the script and nobody wants to hear it because it doesn't tell them what they want to hear. It is a struggle, but it could be amazing. We can stop it. We have the opportunity in the next 36 months to stop it. Because then the people of the world who are watching us will agree. If we fail in the next 36 months, the world fails and the script goes on the way it was written. And I wish people saw that.
And this is exactly where my battery is running out.
Got you.
And I want to say to you from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh my gosh, we should do a lot more of these. I should have
please. And I will say this in Greek again. Evcharisto. Tori. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I just want to ask you quickly, maybe few seconds how people can support you. Everything will be down below this video, all the links, those 2 videos that Tori mentioned, channels and everything, how they can support
I
you.
hope you edit this because I think we went off on tangents too. But streamline, honesty, and raw is good. I mean, they can support me through, just watching my stuff and spreading the word, and learning. Support comes in many forms, and I think the more eyes we have and the more ears we have that listen and see, the stronger we are, and that's the best support. Prayers are the best. So drop your prayers. That's the best currency, and have faith, because if he created you, there's no way he's going to destroy you. And if he is with us, then who can be against us? But don't expect him to magically manifest that house. He gave you a shovel, use it. I guess that's what we should be focusing on, using that shovel the right way and having discernment from all these people that prey upon our needs for a quick solution. We're in the era of instant gratification, where we write thoughts in 140 characters and watch TikTok videos in 7 seconds. Our attention span is small. We need to start reading more and talking more.
Tori, lots of love to you. Thank you so much. And to everyone who's watching, I definitely, there's no question, I want to connect with Tori again. Everyone knows.
We'll have camera next time.
On camera next time. Thank you, guys. And until next time.